neoliberalism, global shift, and making of rising power. Beyond that, he writes regularly for a variety of outlets such as Sesran International, Open Democracy, and Conversation, and he's also the founding editor of the Journal of Global Fault Lines. So, Prof. Gökay, thank you for accepting the joining us, and the screen is yours now.
Thank you, Emre, and thank you, Yaşar University. I am very happy to be with you here, and I hope one day I will be giving this seminar in your beautiful Izmir. Unfortunately, the weather here today is not as good as Izmir. I am sure it's raining outside and a little bit cold. So the next 40-45 minutes, I'm going to talk about Trump 2 administration and say a few words about what he's trying to do, how the others see Trump, and how I see Trump's policies, and also trying to make some kind of a connection with this, my general approach to a global system, like American hegemony declining and the new hegemon candidates are emerging, and this creates a confusion, anarchy, and chaos. So these two aspects are going to be the key theme of this talk. So in the wake of Trump's victory in the recent American presidential elections, there has been a noticeable rise in discussions, even before the elections, about concept of multipolarity and the American disengagement from Europe and even from the security arrangement NATO. And the recent Munich Security Conference, in their final report, I think in January, was also talking about this. So there are key points I just put here from the report of the Munich Security Conference. Basically, in summary, it says that the United States is abdicating its role, its historical role as Europe's security guarantor. So I generally agree with this assessment of American disengagement. However, my main difference with the recent analysis is that this is not a very new development. It has been going on for some years, for some decades, and the Trump administration recently just openly admitted and started to behave in the same direction, even though the process has been there for several decades. So the current deep uncertainty and global crisis did not arise unexpectedly just with Trump presidency, but they are the direct consequences of structural changes and systemic contradictions going on in the system, at least since 1970s. This phenomena, as we describe, and many others describe as the global shift, is a transformation in the hegemonic structures of the world system, and which means that the center of the center of accumulation in the world system is moving away from North America and Western Europe to the global South and global East, mainly China, India, and other major emerging economies. And this situation was very clearly and very professionally explained by Peter Gowan, my former tutor and our former research collaborator, who died over 10 years ago. In his book, Global Gamble, he explained, he analyzed this system probably better than anybody else. So this process very strongly started during the crisis of 1973 with Nixon presidency and his dual strategy of high oil pricing and financial deregulation. The United States banks were then given the exclusive right to recycle the large amount of dollars accumulated in the Middle East oil kingdoms. And all this was used to save, to support the American banks and the financial institutions in New York. So a powerful Wall Street and US Treasury financial regime was created as a result of this, which again was the main theme of Peter Gowan's book, Global Gamble. The monetary and financial regime, again, Peter explains, was used by the United States administration as a strong instrument of economic statecraft to lead the globalization process in the direction of US interests, and also to neoliberalize the global system, the global economy, not only in the Western part of the world, but also all over the world. So this is the cover of the book of Peter Gowan, Global Gamble, which was first published in 1999. So the extended period of hegemonic transition from Euro-Atlantic core to Asian economies, and I'm sure especially Oz can remember this term very well, because Giovanni Arrighi used these terms, and Oz used this as the central pillar of his very original PhD dissertation. So this extended period of hegemonic transition from Euro-Atlantic core to Asian economies, particularly to China and India, reflect historical transition marked by instability and chaos. So we can borrow the words from Gramsci when he was describing an earlier global shift in 1930. He says, the old is dying and the new cannot be born. And in this situation, a number of morbid symptoms appear. So I think these words can almost exactly be applied to current era, the current transition, the current global shift. So both Europe and United States are witnessing the rise of new forms of authoritarianism. And in this context, those in power who often present themselves as liberal democratic leaders, probably Trump is an exception. Trump is not pretending to be a liberal Democrat, even though his administration is very little difference from previous administrations. They are implementing stringent austerity measures for many years, for more than 10 years. And they are creating an environment which supports racism, xenophobia, and intolerance all over Europe and United States. So the gradual decline of hegemony and the unraveling of the Euro-Atlantic alliance did not begin, as I said, with the rise of right-wing authoritarian leaders like Trump. This phenomena is deeply embedded within the broader context of the systemic contradictions of the global interstate system. So as established powers and their strength start getting less and less influential, new forces emerging and challenging traditional alliances and redefining the landscape of global governance, again, clearly explained by many authors, but in this context, I will refer to Peter Dicken. Peter Dicken is the author, now a retired professor of Manchester University, is the author of the book called Global Shift. And this paragraph is very important, I think very interesting. This explains what's happening now and what happened in the past and what will happen in future. So I quote, all geographies of production, distribution, and consumption are continuously being disrupted and that new geographies and sites continuously being created. In that sense, the global economic map is always in a state of becoming. It is never finished. So President Trump's decision to arrange for a United States delegation to meet with the Russian delegation in Saudi Arabia created huge concern among the Western circles. And again, created so much disappointment and a great level of surprise in the media. But of course, if we understand Trump's policy, America First policy, and the security and political economic concerns of the US administration, we can see that there is no surprise in this policy, Trump treating Russia differently than European allies. So America First policy reflects a pragmatic approach, acknowledging Russia as a significant military power, a key power in that core area of Eurasia, and China as an influential economic superpower. So in the long term, and even in the medium term, China is the key adversary. China is the key candidate to compete, to challenge American administration, American global hegemony, both economically, politically, and militarily. So in that sense, pursuing a strategy of appeasing Russia, or at least pulling Russia a little bit away from China regarding the current war in Ukraine, could be an effective means to reduce Russian reliance of China. Otherwise, as we all have seen during the last two and a half years, since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, the Russia moved more and more depending on China on many different levels. So ultimately, the new US administration under Trump appears to have made a calculated choice to engage directly with Russia, therefore bypassing Europe and Ukraine in the search for peace in the region. So it appears that Trump's strategy regarding the Russian leadership involves granting Putin a degree of international respectability and restoring a Russian position in the G7 or G8. If Russia joins, it becomes G8. Again, if we look at Secretary of State Marco Rubio's words around the time of the meeting in Saudi Arabia, he said incredible opportunities exist to partner with Russia. So therefore, they value the closeness with Russia, not for the sake of Putin's eyes and anything about personal friendship between Putin and Trump, but mainly it means something geopolitically important in terms of the American global strategy. So the future of global politics and economics is becoming increasingly clear as we move almost every day something new, something in the same direction happening, moving. Therefore, we can say that the global economics and politics will not be dictated only by Europe and American powers. A new international system is emerging. And this is not even my word or some historians, some academics' words. Even the United States administration in their documents very clearly mentioning about this. As the Western world experiences a decline or a relative decline in its dominance, these new powers, the emerging powers, are striving to establish an alternative global power structure. However, they, at the moment, currently, lack the capacity or at least coordination with each other to exert significant influence. As wars and conflicts erupt, and they are erupting regularly, as you know, in the last couple of years, even months, the landscapes in the Middle East, various territories in Africa, in various parts of Eurasia. So the authority of the West seems to be getting less and less with each passing conflict. While these emerging powers like China, India, Russia, Brazil, they endeavor to reshape the global dynamics, but they find themselves yet the right capacity to decisively influence and change the power balance. And all this is creating a chaos and lack of authority, and within which we can see more and more problems emerging in the world. So despite all this evidence pointing to a structural historical decline of the Euro-Atlantic area as a whole, many editorials and prominent economists, academics such as Paul Krugman, they castigate Trump as an unstable individual who knows nothing about politics and economics. President Trump's tariff offensive was called by the magazine The Economist as a ruination day. The sweeping tariffs imposed on the entire world, both allies and adversaries, have been regarded as economic madness. These tariffs on all imported goods represent the most significant surge in over 130 years. The intention was to reduce or eradicate the American trade deficit and to replace foreign-made goods with the American products. So therefore, when he says, make America great again, exactly this is what he means. The American production, the American trade, the American jobs to increase. Many mainstream economists and commentators describe this as wildly destructive stupidity, astonishing self-harm, lack of any grown-ups in Trump's economics team, or being diverse from reality. So White House officials, they explain quite clearly what the real aim in this tariffs policy. They say the goal is concentrating economic forces nationally to push for structural changes to the global economy, to rectify challenges that are made difficult for the American economy. And therefore, they aim to complete restructure of the global system just to eliminate any kind of harm or challenge or danger emerging for the United States. So ultimately, Trump aims to reshape the global economy by prioritizing America's national interests. And in that sense, even though I may sound like I am defending Trump, I'm not defending Trump. Trump is a horrible person, but Trump understands the problem. And Trump's analysis of the global system, global shift, global structures is much more realistic than many of those academics, economists, and newspaper editors who are criticizing him as being ignorant or who doesn't understand anything about economics. So Team Trump 2, having correctly diagnosed the crisis of neoliberal globalization, and therefore they aim to reverse by putting American national interests first. The United States began to experience a trade deficit, and as I said, this didn't happen just yesterday, just recently, but a long time ago. And in the 1980s, American manufacturing started to shift away from home or to shift its operations from home to other countries in global South and Canada, mainly because they wanted to capitalize on cheap labor, but also use advanced technology available in other places, mainly in Canada. A significant portion of goods exported to the United States originated from American companies, but producing them in Mexico, Canada, or China.
Bülent Hocam, are you changing slides? We are still on Peter Deacon.
Of course, yes. I will be changing slides soon, but not now. Okay. So the global financial crisis, 2007-8, made the situation even worse. So many production sites moved away from America, and the American trade deficit started to get more and more, and global financial crisis almost became a wake-up call, because almost everyone watching the global economy, they realized what was going on around that time. So around the 2008, 2009, another wave of exodus, another wave of moving away from America took place, and many companies moved on to tax havens or cheap labor sites. At the same time, the American administration, in order to save the banks, they started pouring large amount of money in the financial system. And after that, of course, COVID-19 made situation even worse. The structural economic tendency of the current world system is the logic of the world capitalist system. So this is not the result of some kind of conspiracy. This is not the result of something which happened behind the closed doors. This is the essential, very basic logic of the capital. Capital always looks for locations, new sites where it can make higher and higher profit margins or rate of profit. So when in one location the profit margins getting lower and lower, then capital moves somewhere else where the labor is cheap, or raw materials are plenty, or the transportation cost is low, and nothing can stop this. The borders cannot stop this, and it is why that's the main reason of this movement always happening. Even now, for instance, some companies are moving their production sites away from China, because as the Chinese wages started increasing, and they are going to cheap labor locations. So attaining hegemonic power, as the United States was the hegemonic power at least since the end of the Second World War, to gain this power is not an easy task. And it has only happened 3 times in the last 500 years of modern world system, only 3 times. By the Dutch Republic in the mid-17th century, by Great Britain in the mid-19th century, and by the United States in the mid-20th century until recently. As the time progresses, states strengthen their economic, political, and military status, and they become more hesitant to follow the leadership of the previous hegemonic power, starting to contest the hegemon's position. This rivalry can cause disruptions in the standings of global economy, global power, and these also affect every single power in the world. So when this hegemonic power starts losing its hegemonic position, and when the challengers increase their competition, then this creates potential chaos, potential anarchy in the global system. So since the early 1990s, there has been a significant and observable power shift. toward the global East, global South, which includes China, India, Russia, Brazil, and several other medium-sized emerging economies like Turkey, South Africa, South Korea. So with the rapid rise of these new powers, the relative influence of the United States and its allies in Western Europe is clearly declining. Now, some words about how and why even many experts seem to be surprised with this current global shift is happening. But of course, there were some researchers, academics, even more than 50 years ago, identified this global shift. In 1968, this person, Organsky, wrote a book, World Politics. And in this book, he was talking about United States and its Western allies may lose their dominant position as China is rising. And Organsky further suggested that an alternative power hierarchy, a multi-party or multi-power situation could emerge to challenge the dominant position of the United States. So just imagine 1968, still almost like the American hegemony was at its height. Even 20, 30, 40 years after that, many people still were not able to see this global shift. That's why I think this book, Organsky's book, The World Politics, is very significant, very important. So it was not merely a prediction what Organsky did. So he wasn't just speculating from nowhere. Because in the period towards the end of the 1960s and in early 1970s, there were some significant changes. And for those political economists and historians of the political economy, it was possible to measure the direction, the new direction of the global system, global politics. Significant changes were occurring in the global system. Organsky was among some other scholars to notice this and to start to write about this. So the restructuring became much more significant. The problems and the American attempts to restructure this became more apparent during the Nixon period, during the 1973 crisis. As I mentioned before, when Nixon's dual strategy was introduced, elevated oil prices and financial deregulation of the banks. So this monetary and financial activities was used, again, Peter Gowan argues in his work, by various United States administrations as a formidable instrument of economic statecraft, or even like we can call it economic warfare. And this is how the neoliberalism started to be used and to be imposed on the rest of the world. So later on, 20 years, almost 20 years after Organsky, Paul Kennedy probably was the first person provided actual measurements to this decline of global hegemon's economic power and trade and manufacturing strength in his book, in his most well-known book, The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers. And Paul Kennedy in that book saying, I quote, "The task facing American statesmen over the next decades is to recognize that broad trends are underway and that there is a need to manage affairs so that the relative erosion of the United States position takes place slowly and smoothly. So Paul Kennedy provided a position in that book. And Paul Kennedy was not just any historian, he was also someone the American administration closely listened, and they had close links. Paul Kennedy published many articles and op-eds in foreign policy. So Paul Kennedy, in a way, represents, since then, a position within the American administration. A number of American presidents, to some extent, followed what Paul Kennedy was suggesting in this book in 1987. So Kennedy documented in this book the decline of the United States as a global power by comparing macroeconomic indicators such as industrialization levels, real GDP growth, the amount of energy used, etc., and compare this with the same measures of some European countries, Russia and Japan. His findings revealed very clearly in this book that there was a shift. Already in 1987, he measured this shift in the power dynamics of the world, and he identified many financial and trading styles as well connected to this changing position in the global system. So Kennedy's perspective on the relative decline of the United States power, also shared by a number of other critical thinkers, more and more from 1990s onwards, but many more in 21st century. And in this context, I would like to mention about Emmanuel Todd, the author of After the Empire, The Breakdown of the American Order, his 2003 book. Emmanuel Todd says in that book that the United States is operating beyond its means, causing frustration among both allies and adversaries due to its military and ideological maneuvers. As American global dominance wanes, Todd foresees the emergence of a Eurasian alliance. So he's talking about a Eurasian alliance in this book that would bring together Europe, Russia, Japan, and the Arab Islamic world. He points to several concerning trends, including Americans' precarious economy, which increasingly depends on illusions and the goodwill of foreign investors, alongside a foreign policy that squanders the nation's resources. So Emmanuel Todd was very, very critical of the American foreign policy. And also, you can see from this that since 1987, the American leaders didn't follow the advice of Paul Kennedy. So these writers, starting from Organsky up to Emmanuel Todd, and many more joined in the 21st century, through their analysis of the political and economic structures that shape the world, they utilize historical context and specific empirical data just to illustrate that United States-centric power structure is losing its strength and slowly and gradually diminishing. And at the same time, regional powers, starting with China and a number of others, are ascending, are rising. This decline highlights the structural shifts that have occurred as the global system has endeavored to adapt to new historical realities. These emerging powers are the new historical reality, and the losing strength of the Western powers, again, another new reality. And all these are parts of the same transformation which is happening in the world today. So, but most of these changes we are talking today and which are obvious to us became obvious at the end of the Cold War in 1991, when the Soviet Union came to an end and the Soviet bloc in Eastern Europe came to an end. So the end of the Cold War produced important shifts in the organization of the world economy that have further challenged the position of the hegemonic power, even though in early 1990s, the impression in the Western capitals was just the opposite. Especially if you look at the authors like Francis Fukuyama, that there was not that extremely optimistic expectation that there will be no more rivalry, there will be no more competition. The Western system led by United States will be dominant. So, but while your U.S. military strength is still superior compared with all other competitors, the U.S. share of global economy, global production, global trade has declined substantially since the end of the Cold War. So 1 year after the 2008 global financial crisis, Kennedy, the same Paul Kennedy who wrote the 1987 book, in 2008, Paul Kennedy described the current level of global shift with these words. If one believes in the economist's theory of convergence, that is the coming closer together of the product and income of companies, regions, and countries, then the conclusion is clear. As China, India, South Korea, Brazil, Mexico, and Indonesia all catch up, the American share of things will relatively shrink, sooner or later. And this debate really is about sooner or later, not about if. We are going to witness a major shift in the global balances of power. So as I said, global hegemony is something which always moves, shifts, even though it takes a long time, but it always happens. Because global hegemony is a self-limiting, self-defeating, and temporary condition in international affairs. This is because hegemonic power carries the responsibility of organizing the international system, providing public goods, and intervening when necessary. And all of this increase pressures, and all of these are very costly, and all this increased pressures and economic cost for the hegemonic power. So eventually, the hegemonic power reaches a point where it becomes overcommitted and cannot sustain the cost of maintaining the system any longer. In this situation, the hegemon prioritizes its own domestic responsibilities over international obligations, or struggles to fulfill global duties. It sounds just like America First policy. Ultimately, this leads to a decline and eventual collapse of hegemony, resulting in chaotic circumstances that are not always caused by agency. Trump's drastic tariff policy did not create the current situation. The decline of the hegemon has been structurally ongoing, as I try to explain, for many decades. Although Trump's policy may have contributed to current chaotic situation. In 2004, United States National Intelligence Council predicted that China would become an economic powerhouse. And they therefore identify China someone rising and challenging and negatively affecting United States supreme position. This National Intelligence Council introduced a document called Mapping the Global Future, Report of the National Intelligence Council's 2020 project. So they were, in 2004, they were trying to predict how the situation will develop until 2020. So one of the council's key reports, this one, was very obvious, very clear. They identified the direction, they identified the challenge, and they identified even the decline of the United States position in terms of military capacities. If you look at this document, in terms of production, even high technology, they were basically, this document was saying that United States would probably lose its dominant position by 2020, which is quite accurate, actually, if you look at the current situation. And again, in the same document, Mapping the Global Future document, there are lines I just read, such as, in the same that commentators refer to the 1900s American century, like 20th century American century, the 21st century may be seen as the time when China comes into its own. So 21st century may become the Asian century. I mean, this is something the National Intelligence Council of the United States predicted in 2004. And the report mentioned in several places that the world in 2020 and later will be significantly different, will look significantly different than the world 2004. So Team Trump seeks to reverse this. Team Trump is very much aware of this. And what Team Trump is saying, is doing, is very much in line with this, the American National Intelligence Council's document. So in a way, Team Trump is the product of the same mentality. And Team Trump is trying to reverse this, trying to stop this, if possible. And therefore, all the things Team Trump is trying to do, like pulling Russia away from China, and trying to increase the American production and trade by various tariffs and various policies, they are all designed to stop or at least to reverse this tendency. So Team Trump basically seeks to transfer responsibility away from Europe concerning Russia, while strengthening Israel's ability to navigate the Middle East and address Iran. So Team Trump basically trying to pull America away from all these regions and put all its energy at home. Also, the inclusion of Russia in the European security architecture is one of the aims of Team Trump, which at the moment is very different from other European powers' policies. Presently, only European powers appear to endorse demonization of Russia policy, but Team Trump is very much aware of the fact that this will not help the Western side by pushing Russia to the side of China. So Trump's team identified China as the primary national security challenge, the real threat. And therefore the American policies under Trump is designed completely to change this position. The primary objective of the tariff measures and Trump's relations with Russia and Trump's position in the other parts of the world is not exactly just for economic reasons, but mainly for geopolitical reasons, to unite other nation states for an economic and military campaign around United States against China. So having said all this, we also have to say that it's obvious by looking at the current data, unfortunately for Trump and his team, it may already be too late to impede China's rise, to reverse this situation, or even delay the decline of American hegemonic power. Neoliberal globalization has intensified the integration of production through hybrid production networks and trade relations, rendering traditional systems of tariffs inadequate. So in a way, the impact of the tariffs cannot be as great as Trump team is expecting. And that's why many American multinationals, many American members of the business community, they are saying this. They are saying that, look, this is harming us as well, and even more so. So the rise and fall of the great powers has long been a central theme in the study of international relations. And in this sense, another important writer and his book, 2011, and he wrote an article in 2011, and then he expanded this. Professor Danny Quay of London School of Economics, his calculations measured the center of economic gravity of the global system. So he measured, he did very detailed economic calculations. He looked over, I think, about 700 key locations in the world, and then identified the center of economic gravity, and he clearly measured the shift. His calculations indicate that the center of economic gravity in the global economy transitioned from a position in the Atlantic between North America and Western Europe in 1980 to the southeastern corner of Mediterranean, just south of Izmir, just south of where Yaşar University is, in Turkey in 2008. If you look at the map here, so from 1980, in 2008, it came in the Mediterranean, and then it is going on in 2015 is somewhere in Iran, and then now it is probably in India, going towards India and China. So Professor Quay, by extrapolating growth data from approximately 700 locations, he predicts that by mid-century, the global economy's center of gravity will continue to shift east to the border of India and China. So he uses the term economic center of gravity to describe the average position of global economic activity, calculated based on GDP from all these identifiable locations on the Earth's surface. So, I'm talking 45 minutes or so, so I'll just finish in a couple of minutes. It is hard to imagine that any global hegemonic power, and currently United States, would peacefully accept and adapt to the phenomenal growth of East Asia and recognize its own decline. But we are in the middle of a major transition from the West to the East, mainly to Asian powers. It is unlikely that the United States will go quietly and peacefully, but we still are hoping that this will not end up like the 1930s global shift. So I would like to finish by referring to another one of my favorite commentators, Martin Wolf, the Financial Times chief commentator. Almost all global economic issues, I agree with Martin Wolf, and I learned from his op-eds in Financial Times. So he is basically writing this for the last 10 minutes or so. This is something from 2017, what he wrote. And he wrote after this many more similar commentaries. So basically, the world is currently in a fragile imbalance as the global hegemon's decline continues. And Martin Wolf describes this as US power has retreated both geopolitically and economically. And we are living once again in an era of strident nationalism and xenophobia. So hegemonic powers come and go, and then eventually the change establishes itself. But the process of rise and decline of the powers is a lengthy and painful process. It produces a number of morbid phenomena in between. This is where we are, I'm afraid. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Bülent Hocam, for this comprehensive, insightful, thought-provoking presentation. Indeed, our students are familiar with several names that you have already mentioned. Indeed, Martin Wolf, we've been discussing about him. I was telling that even Martin Wolf is the editor, the flagship of the neoliberal newspaper. We talk about his book about democracy and capitalism. So how he's proposing, rather than shareholders, stakeholders, discussions that he's making. Now we need to come out with a new version of. For sure, he's into saving capitalism. I can see that. But when he's saying this, if it's Bülent is saying that, it's not something new. I was telling, but when he's saying that, then something has been changing. So thank you for giving reference to him. Since I'm the moderator, I have for sure thousands of questions to you. I don't want to exploit my position, but if the audience let me to do that, I would like to raise a question because we have that discussion in the class as well. By the way, our class is current issues in international affairs. Each week we've been covering different topics around the world, mainly about political economic issues that we've been dealing with. So in our last class, it was about political economy of development growth issues. And I was trying to figure out where Vasily Puskas is with us as well. I hope that he will jump in as well. Trying to locate where you are, because the position, the approaches that you've been adopting to Vasily Puskas is contradictory to this mainstream reading of political economy that we are familiar with, hegemony, liberal institutionalism, etc. So along with that, most of the analysis that I've been following to make sense of American economic policy at the moment focuses on Trump's personality and his, populism, his craziness, his unpredictableness. So drawing of all of those, how do you locate yourself? Which school or école that you put? It is critical political economy, dependency, critical geopolitics, geopolitical economy. I was trying to figure out, and we have that small discussion in the class. So just know about, and so that I'm sure we will have a better understanding about your approach. Thank you very much, Bülent Hocam. As a kickoff question, for sure, other will follow.
Thank you, Emre. Do you want me to respond or wait for other questions?
How shall we do? Are there questions in the chat box?
Emre.
Yes, Oğuz Hocam.
May I step in? My keyboard is
Yeah,
not that
yes,
well.
sure, yeah.
Bülent Hocam, I've been intrigued, overjoyed, and excited listening to you. As someone who has been part of your journey as global fault lines researcher, I just cannot help but cut one thing. I listened to you 17 years ago in Kiel. How about the dollar-based financial system? How would you locate that in the whole thing? Do you think that it's not going to allow United States to kind of extend this hegemony over the rest of the world? Because I personally believe that once these production moved to the rest of the world, the wealth started to accumulate there, and it was a way, this dollar-based financial system was a way for United States to reap that surplus, kind of cajole them back, move back into the United States, and I believe how they maintain their master over the rest of the world. So how would you locate dollar-based financial system? I would love to hear more on that topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So any other questions from the floor, from the audience? I see Ali Hocam. I see our students are over there. I'm sure they have a couple of questions for you. Maybe they are shy at the stage. Anyway, Bülent Hocam, maybe you respond this first too. Thank you.
Thank you. About your point, Emre, I don't think in the current state of global affairs, academia, it is so easy to put oneself in a box. So there are certain influences which shaped me and still influences me, and I'm sure Vasilis agrees with me, because we kind of influence each other and we are influenced by similar kind of people. So I call myself a critical realist. A critical realist, mainly influenced by Peter Gowan, and also Andre Gunder Frank, which...
So that was the first book that you recommended me. I remember we had the first meeting with you.
Yes,
and you
reorient.
said me that read that book and come back.
Exactly.
Andre Gunder Frank, yeah.
So
That Peter Gowan was the second one, yeah.
So because of the Andre Gunder Frank, I am very critical of the authors you mentioned, like the authors of Why Nations Fail, Acemoğlu. I mean, even though it's a really good book, I use it. I ask my students to review it widely, but there's a key aspect of the book. It's very Western-centric, very Eurocentric. So which aspect I always use Andre Gunder Frank. So mine is non-Eurocentric, non-Western-centric critical realist. And that's why I like someone like Martin Wolf, because Martin Wolf is very, very realistic. He analyzes the situation without giving any spin, and he acknowledges the problem, again, like Paul Kennedy, in the same way. So is Peter Dicken. So almost all these names are in the same category. They are not criticizing the world capitalist system in the same way I do criticize. They are not criticizing neoliberalism in the same way, but they are not trying to give a different spin. They are not trying to idealize what is there. That's why my realism side shares a common ground with them.
Okay, thank you very much.
And for dollar-based system, again, I think when you were in Kiel, probably I started writing about this. Even during the Caspian oil pipeline debate, there were some indications. So, I mean, I'm not saying that American state will lose the global trade currency status immediately. But if you look at the actual figures, I mean, not only last few years, but the last 40 years, the percentage of the American dollars used in the global economy declined significantly. And now since then, I think probably since the beginning of 21st century, we can talk about in the global economy, even though the American dollar is still the largest, occupies the largest space, but there is a basket of currencies. So I think we are in a basket of currencies. And in this basket of currencies, especially during the last 15 years or so, like from 2008 onwards, there is more and more trends and tendencies happening. The many countries using their own currencies in trade in between themselves. And during the war in Ukraine started in 2022, the Russia with India, the Russia with China, and with a number of Latin American countries, they stop using dollar and they are using their own currencies. So I think this situation is a process, and it doesn't happen from one day to another. But only if we look at over a long term, then we can see the change. So I was reading, I think just a few days ago, and again something in Financial Times, the last weekend section, there is a long article. Some of the articles on Saturday like takes 2 big pages. In one of the articles is exactly about Trump and what Trump is doing, how is influencing or may influence the dollar's position. And there are some figures, some recent figures, like in 1980, let's say the dollar was something like almost 90% of the global trade done by dollar. Now it is just over 70%, and then going down. So I think this is the trend. This is how I see the dollar-based system, always. And this is the shift. This is a clear indication of the change and shift. And at the moment, for instance, the China has no real benefit if they push their currency to be internationalized and then become one of the global currencies, and that's why it is not happening. Otherwise, yes, they are able to change this, but everything needs time. So a number of things has to change globally before we come to that point.
I had my answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Are you
Bülent
in
Hocam.
Turkey or America?
Back to the COVID times. I'm in Turkey, sir. I have been back in Turkey over the last 2 years now. I'm working for a Turkish university in Ankara.
So
I would love to have you too.
So this is in Ankara now. Okay.
Oh yeah, this is Ankara.
Good.
So any questions with voice? Vasily Puskas?
Emre, I don't know what happened with the Zoom link. I was trying to get on the Zoom link with the QR code. I couldn't. But
Okay,
anyway,
sorry
I'm still
for
on
that.
the phone. They send me. One of your colleagues sent me the Zoom link, but then he was asking me an ID and all this. Still, I'm on the phone, and I had Bülent, of course, some of the things. We're writing a paper together on this. The first point, I think Bülent touched it, I missed some points, is that many people, Keynesian economists, believe that Trump is completely mad, is insane, is out of order.
Yes, that's what I was asking actually, yeah.
I don't think I think it's absolutely fine. And he has a plan, and they produce. That's the way they're thinking. You cannot say they don't have a plan. That's the first thing. The second is that I find out a lot of continuity between Trump and all the previous administrations, both Republican and Democratic.
Biden.
Yeah, Biden and even Obama, since the financial crisis, a lot of continuity, including the issue of migration. The migration. I mean, the Democrats are not less racist than Trump. I mean, let's face it. I mean, they built more fence than Trump himself. And on tariffs, Biden did not reverse any of the tariffs Trump's first administration did. So therefore, Bülent is dead right when he says that the administrations are trying to prevent this decline of the slow decline of the United States. But it's just Trump. It was the Ukraine war that triggered this. When they saw that Russia cannot be defeated, then he says there must be an open U-turn on foreign policy and strategy on all matters. The role of the dollar is very important because one important paper which I've read is that by Stephen Miran, which was published in November 2024. Miran is now the head of economic advisors in Trump's team. There, he is very aware of the so-called Triffin dilemma in international economy. For Triffin dilemma is that a country cannot offer its currency to be a global reserve currency forever without having to face deficits in international trade, in domestic deficits, and so on, which means that the investors will stop gradually trusting that currency. So the currency has to somehow devalue. But if you devalue your currency, then why should an investor invest in that devalued currency? This is a dilemma. They try to sort it out by using tariffs as a kind of bargaining chip. That's what, and this is what Trump is doing. So Trump has guidance by his team and his staff, and as opposed to his first administration, now he's in a better control of the state machine of the United States. He went deeper into the state, put his own people. Is more organized, and they wants to take some revenge from the previous ones. But this is more political personalities and policies. The American state is in a deep crisis, since long ago. And that Trump, because of the Ukraine war, said, well, we're going to have a nuclear war here with Russia. We don't want a nuclear war. What is going to happen? And they decided to leave Russia to the Europeans. Do whatever you want with them, with the Russians. We're going to concentrate on our domestic affairs and on China. I think this is Trump's line, and he knows very well what he's doing. He's not stupid or an idiot. I don't know if Bülent agrees with that, but I think this is my understanding in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. Bülent Hocam, you agree?
Yes, of course. I mean, I agree. We have been writing on these things. We produced several short papers, but now we are in the process of writing something over 10,000 words.
So, new book is coming?
I think we individually are trying to finish some books now, but there's a joint book we will work later this year. But my project now, which I have just less than a week left to finish and to send to the publisher, which is called The Wars of Neoliberalism.
That's very good.
Can you give us some teaser?
Yes, because I'm basically talking about the wars followed September 11, 2001. And I was looking at those wars and the decisions for those wars. And they're all directly connected to US-led neoliberal project, both in terms of going to those wars, but also what to do in those occupied countries, and plus the the extended use of private military contractors. So this is the first time in the world history, even this large number of private military contractors, even more than the number of soldiers used by the American administration in Afghanistan, in Iraq.
So the data is transparent. I mean, it's all open.
Yes. I mean, this data all from the American Army magazine and American the Senate investigations, and also a large amount of money was wasted. I mean, for instance, something like something called human terrain system was introduced in 2005. After the initial a few years in Afghanistan and after the 2 years in Iraq, they realized they need some more local knowledge in order to establish, in order to continue their occupation successfully and to transfer the economic and political structures of the country. And they started to recruit academics like social anthropologists, IR and politics experts, mainly PhDs or new PhDs, and they offered them large amount of money as salaries. So this human terrain system is a huge project, probably one of the largest in the history, that they took all these young people and they went, like hundreds of them went to Afghanistan, hundreds of them went to Iraq, and they just started to work with the troops, alongside with the troops. So basically what they were, the original idea was, because these people know the history, culture, some of them know the language, so therefore they will be working together with the military units and try to avoid any kind of misunderstandings, because in Afghanistan and Iraq, many soldiers, officers, at first were entering people's homes without taking their shoes or anything. So these people try to smooth these operations. But of course, again, just like in the military, the private contractors case, large amount of money was wasted, and mainly those American security firms got the money, and they employed many people who has no idea about the region, the location. Some ex-soldiers applied and got jobs as the experts, cultural experts of the region. So, for instance, you all may heard the name of General Petraeus. Petraeus was behind this project. I mean, his population-centered approach, this is what he designed in those days, saying that we have kind of a population-centric approach. And then this project was designed, and I think when Petraeus started to lose his position, again, around that time, they abolished this whole project. So there are so many things just like this. And I try to explain in the book, all these are parts of military neoliberalization of the American army and military operations.
So thank you very much for that as well. I see.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, sure. Lily, the screen is yours.
Okay. Hello. So, Emre, you didn't mention a book that I wrote with Bülent. It's called Human Costs of War.
Yeah, you're right. But as I mentioned at the very beginning, in parallel to today's topic. So it's more, Pax Americana, global economy.
Yeah,
so that's why.
Connected. I'll tell you how, and this is really my question to Bülent. So, first of all, I love everything you said. I wish you'd come and tell my students all of that. But in the last 25 years, we've seen a lot of aggression from the US. We've seen, and its allies, we've seen hundreds of thousands of people killed in the Middle East and elsewhere. So my question is, while this transition is taking place, and if we get to a point where some authors are predicting, what will that mean for human security? What will that mean for any more aggression and war crimes committed against civilians? And is it good news, or is it a bit of the same in that sense? Thank you.
Thank you. This is a
So
very
to
good question.
complement, sorry for that question, there is also debate whether, since it's over now, the U.S. hegemony, would it be more chaotic? Maybe it will be more orderly. Zara Kola, I remember his book, and she's saying that there could be sometimes that this could be better than at the point that we are. So we are destined for the, doomed. We're supposed to be doomed, or maybe a new world, or there's another, Acharya was writing about that, multiplex, a new sort of order, multiplex is waiting for us. That not necessarily be that it will be anarchical and chaotic. Yeah, thank you.
First of all, I don't want to make any judgments or judgmental predictions about whether it will be good or bad. I mean, hegemonic systems come and go, but they don't follow the same pattern all the time. Like every new hegemonic system has specific characteristics. I mean, the reason why we are in the last 30 years or so, how many years was since Afghanistan? 24 years.
24, yeah.
22 years from since Iraq. So since at least 2000, since the beginning of this century, we are witnessing this really aggressive American policy. And this is kind of related to what I mentioned in my presentation. Like I mentioned Paul Kennedy quite often. I mean, Paul Kennedy kind of represents, or that view represents one aspect of American administration. There are always people, and there are still people in American administration, they like to follow what Paul Kennedy advised, like a kind of a peaceful adjustment and then acceptance, and then to make the pain being less and smooth transition. But of course, there are, on the other hand, the position started with neocons, Project for New American Century people. Even before September 11, those people in 1997, when they established Project for New American Century, many of them became ministers, key names in Bush administration. They were also, they were very realistic. I mean, they saw the situation. They saw the American hegemony is going down, and but they thought they can stop this, because they looked at and they said, look, the American military strength is more than all the others put together. And at that point, it was like this. I mean, in the 1990s, every single country below America, all their military strengths put together, still less than the American military strength. So when they look at this, they said, okay, we can use this. We can use this military strength, and we can change. And we can change the direction of this decline. We will stop the decline. And that's why they have been doing this since then. But after every military adventure, the decline continues, even became faster. Because, I mean, all these Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, all these adventures, and now, of course, under Biden, Ukraine, all that made the situation worse. And I am sure there are people still now, I mean, not only academics, but some people in the American administration, they are thinking like Paul Kennedy. They are saying, look, all this is wrong. But I don't think in real political life, things are as neatly as can be explained. Like, I'm not saying that there are just two positions. There are many positions. One extreme position is neocon position. The other extreme position may be Paul Kennedy's position. So the American administration is moving in between. So Trump is, I think, somewhere closer to Paul Kennedy's position. He doesn't seem to be in favor of increasing American engagement globally, at least for now. So when the global shift, I mean, I don't think global shift will come to an end that soon. I mean, for instance, the previous global shift started around 1911, even before the First World War, and only finalized in 1945. And only because there was a war. War hastened things. Because of the war, things change quickly. So with the war, from 1911 to 1945, more than 30 years passed. So we are in this global shift, and probably since the beginning of 21st century, global shift is more visible. So I don't think it will come to an end soon. So for that reason, if Ayşe mentioned about the global shift is over, I don't think that is the case. I mean, I don't agree with that. So when it comes to an end, and when there emerges a new system of global powers, probably it will be a multipolar system, not a single polar system. And potentially it should be better, because if it is a multipolar system, the powers balance each other. But it is too soon to speculate.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much. Anyone would like to ask directly? If not,
in the past, when I was looking into British history from through Marxist texts, some Marxist texts, what they believe about the British Empire. I found a text, Bülent, by Trotsky in 1901 that says basically the British Empire is in decline. 1901. It's incredible. And then Lenin, of course, made reference to the decline of the British Empire and so on. What is interesting here is to see that in 1969, another Trotskyist, Ernst Mandel, wrote an article in New Left Review with the title, "Where is America Going?", where he was arguing that the crisis of the dollar means the crisis and the decline of the American empire. In 1969. Now, the American state tried to reverse that. And one of the things they did, and they did it quite well, is neoliberalism and neoliberal financialization, globalization. But that recovery of American capitalism was based on nothing, because all manufacturing has moved from the Anglo-American world to China and other parts of the world. And now we're facing the crisis of neoliberal financialization since 2007, 2008. Add to this what Bülent mentioned, Middle East crisis, Libya, Syria, the Arab Spring, Iraq, Afghanistan, all the rest, more recently Ukraine, add the pandemic, which pushed them to inflate the economy because they had to save capitalism. Do you understand? So we have now a new big crisis of the dollar. How are they going to solve this new crisis of the dollar? From what I've read, is that by deepening liberalism. They're not going back to the state. They're not going to give the public, powers. Even some documents about the cryptocurrencies, they try to legalize cryptocurrencies and to peg one cryptocurrency is called stable coin, which the Trump family has invested a lot, to try to peg it to the dollar, to peg the stable coin to the dollar and start doing business with cryptos. That is something that the Economist last week was writing about that. And if the Economist writes about cryptocurrencies, it means something is going on much bigger, which can come out in 6 months. So yeah, this is the trend. Even more wild liberalism. In order to overcome this crisis of American capitalism and the dollar, even more liberals. They're not going to go back to the state with a new Keynesian policy and all that stuff. No. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you, Puskas. Any other voices from the audience, or shall I turn to chat box? So Defne Hoca has a question. Thank you for insightful lecture. I wonder where you locate the EU in a probable future China-led hegemonic international order. That's the question of Defne Hoca. So I'm going on. Ali Balcı Hoca, he said that he joined late. He's admirer of you and your book on Turkish foreign policy. I guess he's talking about Russia-Turkey, your PhD thesis, I presume, or another, or the most recent one that I mentioned. Not sure. Mustafa Demir is also thanking you, and he raised a question. How do you see the most recent developments in the Middle East, starting from the collapse of the Assad regime, PKK announcement laying down guns? Do you see the developments linked to US approach and decline energy economy? Then we are coming to Ali Balcı Hoca has raised a question. Domestic interventions will push many countries away from the US towards China. What do you think recent Trump statement on being respectful regarding Middle Eastern politics? Will such last-minute attempts work in keeping non-Western countries within the US order? Then another one from Atakan, our student. Atakan, would you like to raise your question?
Sure,
Maybe you
I
also
can.
introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Atakan Payman. I'm currently enrolled in the master's program of Yaşar University on International Relations. Thank you for the seminar and your insightful information. I have two questions. The main one is about the power shift itself. As you have also mentioned before, power shifts mainly occur at the end of major wars, like you said, given the First and Second World Wars as examples. Do you think a possible escalation, military escalation between US and China is possible in that case? Also, perhaps, I think, is the relation between US and China. They happen to be very dependent on each other on economic terms. And also, it's the US who's now having problems with the current system as it's falling behind, and China is technically promoting the current system as it benefits itself. So in that sense, do you think this dependence or interdependence is causing the main problem in this China-US split? These would be my questions. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Atakan.
Shall
So I guess that's all
start
for now.
answering?
Yeah.
So, according to the order you presented them, I mean, I knew Daphne would ask something about European Union, so I'm not surprised. Yes, it's an important position. I think European Union is in a very difficult situation right now. Is in not a powerful situation, but also economically, as you know, the central powers, especially Germany, is in deep economic crisis and going through a political crisis as well. And many European Union countries, even including the West European countries, are also witnessing the rise of authoritarian, almost neo-fascist political parties. And this is challenging the central pillar of the European Union too. So European Union in this situation is currently following the events behind rather than playing an active role, especially in the Ukrainian war. And the American administration under Trump is treating European Union again in the same way, like not taking very seriously. I think the logical thing is that European Union had started some years ago to expand its economic and diplomatic links with the new emerging powers. So that should continue. But with this current conflict on the eastern side of Europe, it's kind of stopped. That process stopped because many countries in the global south, global east, they are not taking sides in the Russian war in Ukraine. But European Union, at least the key countries of European Union are. So this is the key obstacle at the moment. So once a solution is found, a peaceful solution is found in the war in Ukraine, maybe European Union can again go out and expand its economic and diplomatic links. I think this is what I can say at this point. Ali Balji's position, Russia, Turkey, again, which I expanded in my Turkey in political, in global economy book. It is continuing, but I think which is related to, I will jump to this next question because these are connected. Mustafa Demir's question, the Middle Eastern, or the events happening in the Middle East, and how can we locate them in this grand scheme of things? Again, I think Vasilis and I wrote a few things about when the regime changed in Syria. We wrote a few things, and we basically putting all the events, and I can put the current expectations in Turkey too, like peace with the PKK. I mean, hopefully that process will continue and bring a real peace in this long war. All these are connected to the global context I explained. So when the global hegemon is declining and started doing less and less and in various parts of the world, and then we can see the middle range powers, regional powers, and some of them we call as sub-imperial powers. They are acting almost independently, or sometimes not necessarily independently, but in the vacuum created by the great powers. Like we identify Turkey and Israel and their role in Syria exactly in the same way. So not necessarily as an agent or arm of the global imperial power, but when the global imperial power withdraw from the region a little bit, or Russia, another big power, was too busy in Ukraine and couldn't do anything in the Middle East, then we can see these two regional powers, strong military powers, Turkey and Israel, they immediately use this situation for their own political and economic interest. So I think in the Middle East, this is happening. And Turkey's position is, again, Turkey is trying to act independently in various parts of the world and move out of the current close context, and therefore having relations with Russia, with China, with United States at the same time. As long as the Turkish government, Turkish administration manages this balanced policy, and for instance, the European Union membership again started to be spoken recently because the European powers needs a country with such a big army. But all these can be seen as the indications of the same changing global position. And an area was created, a power vacuum was created in which these regional strong powers, I mean, Turkey is one of them, Israel is one of them, South Africa is one of them, Brazil, Argentina are them. And in Southeast Asia, there are a number of regional powers like Indonesia. So they are all trying to follow their own interests in that in their own regions when the global situation created this space for them. So Atakan's question finally, I mean, I didn't say that all global shifts happen as a result of a war. I mean, even if it happened, the previous one, happened. I mean, global shift started, as Vasilis mentioned, in 1900s. I mean, Vasilis said even in 1901 there was a reference to declining British hegemony. But that finally concluded with the war. So war brought this to an end. So this current global shift, again, there are all the indications, all the fearful expectations that the US and China may find each other in a military conflict. And for many years now in the West, many commentators talk about the China trying to control Taiwan or to abolish Taiwan's semi-independent status. I think in near future, I can't see this happening. China has no interest currently to do anything like that. The current system, the current state, I think maybe Emre mentioned about this, the current state suits China. I mean, China wants a peaceful progress and development, or maybe until a certain point. But with the provocations, I don't know. I mean, it is always possible, but at the moment, I think it is less likely. And I hope it will not happen, this thing. And hopefully the other countries, the leaders got some lessons from the previous wars. I mean, wars are very difficult for everyone, as you know.
Oh, it's almost 2 hours now. If you don't have any other burning questions, so I suggest to close the session and applaud Bülent Hoca for being with us, sharing his time and insights with us for about 2 hours. So thank you very much. So hope to be together when your new book has been published, right? In the coming days, maybe we will have another seminar, maybe together with Fuskas or Lily in the coming days. So thank you very much. We will be in touch. Okay. Bye-bye. Have a good night.
Thank you, Emre. Thank you for inviting me.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Emre.
Maybe next
Thank
meeting
you,
will be in
everyone,
Yaşar.
for being with us.
Bye.
Bye-bye
Bye,
now.
everyone.
Everyone.